Hi, this is Howard White, and I'm here with the Barrett Matthews. That's right, that's THE, capital letters in quotation, Barrett Matthews. And today we're really just catching up around what's happening from through this pandemic. A lot of people have squatted, as I call it, versus pivoting. And so, we're going to focus on the folks that are pivoting and looking to come out of here full speed. So, Barrett, first of all, good evening, good afternoon, rather, at the time of this recording.
Hello to you, the Howard White.
That's an inside joke with Barrett and I, and so we'll go back a moment or two. Barrett, as we, talk about that, is if you would just share with folks your pivot points are the things that you're pivoting around.
Oh my goodness. I pivot so much, man. I think I'm playing basketball.
Yeah.
Are you talking during this situation or just in general?
Let me rephrase that a little bit then. And so as we looked at what we're doing and really what created the Pivot Conference, I have 5 things I talk about. First, in any situation you hit, first you got to pause. And secondly, you should pray. Prayer has 2 parts to it. One is you asking, but the most important part is you hearing. And then at that point, you hear ideas and things you should pivot around. And once you hear those ideas, then you must develop a plan. And then only once you develop a plan can you pursue those ideas. And so oftentimes as we were sitting here in this, wondering what's next and still don't know fully what's next, we had to be developing a plan around something. And so that right there, I call the pivot point.
Okay. Well, I mean, in relation to what we're going through right now, I had prayer and I had 2 other points added on to that.
Okay.
Which is thanking God and having faith. Because in this situation that we're dealing with right now with the pandemic, if you don't have faith, you're going to live in fear. And you won't be able to pivot correctly if you're fearful. So you got to have faith that you're pivoting in a direction that's going to take you upward. Now, for me, I was already working on some things, but this pandemic forced me to work even more and to put more focus onto it because I was left with me. I couldn't go to someone else and work on other projects. I was working with me. And so I said, well, you got to go to work and make things happen. So I put more focus into things like finishing up my new book, getting that out there, getting on webinars and being interviewed by people like the Howard White. I've been, doing a lot of things. I'm working on a new program for podcasting that is going to really be great once I get it finished to help people to podcast, because I'm working on doing podcasts all over the world and producing them for people. And so a lot of different things I've been doing, but this pandemic forced me to do things. I could have wallowed in self-pity and watched TV the whole time, but guess what? That would have gotten me evicted. That would have gotten me no TV, no cable, no nothing, because no money. So I decided to pivot in a direction that's going to bring me profit.
Now that's a key thing, and I think that is, one of the things I challenge people to do is focus on pivoting towards profitable things. And, and when you think about that, and we'll talk a little bit about the podcasting because, you're going to be sharing some of those strategies at the Pivot Conference. So literally, you talk about pivoting. For me, my store has been I have a retail store and it's physically closed since somewhere in March. I stopped counting. And even before then, you could see the transactions decreasing. Right. And so, one of the things that we've come out of this is helping people do virtual events. And so I was looking at doing a summit. That's how the Pivot Conference came about. Oh, really? And my tech guy, Barrett, I said, hey, let's do a summit. He was like, well, Howard, you ever thought about doing a virtual conference? And of course me, wow, share more. So literally, as you experience, the platform we are utilizing allows you to have concurrent workshops. It allows you to do the one-to-one networking, allows you to have a booth a vendor booth that people can come and experience what you do and talk to you just like you're at a trade show.
Yeah.
So, you'll be talking about podcasting, and, as we talk about that, share why podcasting is a pivotal tool that can be used to pivot around.
Well, and that's a fun topic to talk about, especially now, because we are so used to having that face-to-face interaction, that, shaking hands across the table, and we can't do it now.
No.
We can't do it now, not if we want to be safe and protect ourselves and others. Well, podcasting allows you to still get your message across to people. It still allows you to have people engage with you. It still allows you to have fun talking to your people. It still allows you to take your expertise and spread it. But it takes it to another level, because now you're not just meeting those people that you see around all the time. You're meeting people that live in the next city, live in the next state, live in the next country, live in the next continent, all through podcasting. Many of us, wonder, do I have something, worthwhile talking about? Man, everybody has an audience for something. Yeah. It can be, for instance, I have no interest in quantum physics, but there are podcasts about quantum physics. Mm-hmm. There's so many things I have no interest in, but there's a podcast for it, and there's an audience for it as well.
It's funny you should say that. I have a cousin, he doesn't podcast, and I need to put him in touch with you. Uh-huh. He does more video casting because he does segments on chemistry.
Yeah.
And he's a quantitative analysis chemist. He's that type. Yeah. I like, dude. But he breaks stuff down simple, so he has that simple touch. He's
what they all
say. And, I can't still understand it, but he breaks it down. And so, but he has a decent sized following, but it's a niche. And talk to people about getting clear on your niche, on what you really serve.
Well,
who you really serve.
And that's something that people have a challenge with. You want to find something that you can talk about forever. Something that because a lot of times people think, well, my subject matter is boring. Nobody's going to want to listen to it. There's a lot of things that I went to a conference a couple months ago in California for podcasting. Mm-hmm. There are people who had podcasts about subjects that I'm ashamed to talk about right now, but they had huge audiences.
Yeah.
And there was one guy, I can say this here. He had a podcast. He and his mother had a podcast together. And the podcast was called Talking About Sex with My Mom.
Wow.
And it was very successful. They were speakers at this event.
Wow.
So there's a podcast for everything. They found their niche. And usually a lot of times people stumble upon their niche. You may be talking about something that you love, something that you think is great, and you may find that people like that, but they may take it in a different direction. And once it's taken in that direction, all of a sudden more people want to come in. He didn't want to start a podcast about talking about sex with his mom, but it morphed into that to where now they get asked to speak at different events because of this. So finding your niche may be something you stumble upon, but I always suggest going with something that you love and you can talk about forever. For me, I can talk about several different things. I can talk about productivity. I can talk about football. I can talk about, Black colleges. I can talk about podcasting. I actually am doing a podcast on podcasting. So, there's a lot of different things that you can have a niche in. It doesn't have to be one particular niche. If you find that you're interested in a lot of different things and you want to do podcasts on those, you can. You can. The thing is, understand that your niche may not mean money. Your niche may not mean millions of people listening. Your niche could be something that you can reach a certain sector of people with, and that's who it reaches. It doesn't mean the same thing that you did, it could mean to someone else. So understand that. So don't feel that you are less than if your niche doesn't do what you think it should do to this certain group of people. You can work at it, but don't feel less than if it doesn't do that right away.
I know you're going to share more about this at the Pivot Conference, but one of the things that I heard you say is, and you kind of inferred around it, is that each niche has a certain audience, both depth and width, and so what I mean by that is that, so take productivity. That is wide and fairly deep. Something about, rock quarry probably is a lot smaller, not quite as deep and more focused, but you got those people that are crazy about it. And so, if you would a little bit, is talk a little bit about how do you monetize, or what are some of the different ways? You don't have to go deep into it, but just touch on different ways that a person can monetize and fully utilize doing a podcast.
Oh, there's several ways. One is by having a product to sell. Having a product to sell or a service to sell. But I always recommend a product to sell on your podcast. If you got, like, I just wrote a new book. Don't you think I'm going to be selling my book on my podcast?
Let's see, a call to action. I know you are.
I mean, of course. So the thing is also sponsorship. Sponsorship. Now, here's the thing about sponsorship on podcasts. When you're looking to get a big name company, you're going to have to show that you've got a lot of listeners, at least 1,000 listeners.
Okay.
You got to show that. So you may want to go to the small businesses in your area. You may want to talk to them about advertising on your podcast. Guess what? You may want to put a commercial for your own business on your podcast to draw people in.
I just gave a client that actual tip. He was like, man, I have my podcast, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you get someone else to do the commercial so it's in a different voice. And when you go to a commercial break, it's more of a production because now there's someone professionally doing the commercial.
Yeah, and if you don't have a product or service, guess what? There are people out there looking, there's affiliate programs out there. People are looking for someone to help market their product, and you still get a cut out of it. There's a lot of different ways to monetize your podcast, but first of all, you're going to have to take the action to make sure it happens. It's not going to just happen because you have a podcast, you're going to make money. And you have to actually have a podcast that people feel is valuable, that they feel, you know what, I want to have my name attached to this.
Yeah.
So that's something else you want to do as well. But
what are some keys to, you identified saying do what you love, do some things, do a podcast around something you can talk a lot about and you can share from now until about. That's number one. Number two, really find that niche and hone that niche in. But then as you talk about that is, what are some steps other than calling Barrett Matthews that you can do to pour more value into that podcast?
There is no step other than calling me. No, just playing. But actually, one of the things you can do is interview people.
Yeah.
You may not be the quote unquote expert on certain subjects, but you may be able to find experts who are and interview them. Here's the thing that a lot of people, they think is that, oh my gosh, that person wouldn't, I can't afford to get them on my podcast and all this stuff. A lot of people will speak for free just to get their word out there and get a new audience. Wow. Just to get a new audience. So if you can get them in front of your audience, and here's the thing about podcasting. Don't feel bad because a lot of people are not listening when you first air it. Most people listen to podcasts in the archives.
Yeah.
They listen to them in the archives. So you're sitting there looking at the numbers. The numbers may not come for 3 weeks later for that particular podcast.
And then when people stumble on you, they actually binge listen.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy Barrett Matthews, he making a good point there. Let me go back and see what else he got.
Listen some more. Let me find out something about. Yes, that's what they do. So understand that. So as far as you getting more out of your podcast, interview people. That's one way to do it. Listen to different radio shows. Just regular radio. They do different things to keep the audience interested. They do vignettes. They do comedy. They have different things. They may play a game. They do incentives. All types of different things that you can do on your podcast.
Yeah.
All the things that you listen to on your favorite radio show that you love, now you can do it.
Hmm. Now that's no, you got a great point, because my wife be laughing at me. I be listening to interview style. That's okay. Now watch this person. They're gonna get right to the point. Watch this person. He's gonna commentize the actual question. Watch this person. He's gonna ask the question in a way that a person has to answer it a certain way. He doesn't leave it truly open end. She be like, just watch the show. But so you make a very great point. Go and study and be a student of others as it relates to having those conversations. And
I don't have a wife, but I talk to myself sometimes. At Barrett, just listen to the doggone thing and stop dissecting it. But it's just how we are, I guess.
Now, this time last year, I had a chance to be in D.C. and I was at the museum, African American Museum, and Oprah Winfrey said that. She said her first talk show, her mentor told her, how did she put it? He got off, so she called him and said, "Hey, how did I do?" He said, "You threw up all over the stage." She was like, "What do you mean?" You had so much you wanted to say that you didn't even get the information from the people you had on. So that was so powerful. How can you really become a study of interviewing? You mentioned interviewing style. How can you really become a student of interviewing people? How do you get the most out of them?
Well, it's funny because the biggest key to interviewing is listening. And if you don't listen to other people and how they do it and why they're doing it, then you're gonna miss out. Because here's the thing. As you know, Howard, I used to help run the Black CEO Morning Show.
Right.
We used to get so many guests on that show that were great speakers on stage that bombed on the radio show. Because it's a different format.
Yeah.
It's a different format. So you have to be able to listen.
What's the difference? Let's dive right there, because somebody's listening saying, "Man, he said it's different. I can speak well. Now I'm afraid of doing a podcast because it's different." So
see, and that's the funny thing. The podcast is the best time to be you. Just be you. You don't have to entertain anyone, because the people that you want listening to your podcast are the ones who want to hear or see you. Just be you. If you have a monotone voice, then that's who they want to hear. If they're listening, that's who they want to hear. If you have an up and peppy voice all the time, that's who they want to hear. Now, when you're on stage, you have to have a style that people are going to want to come see.
Yeah.
You have to have a style that people are going to want to come see. And you have to be able to engage them in person. You have to be able to engage them. And a lot of stage speakers rely on that engagement to keep them going. It's kind of like a comedian. They feed off the laughs.
Oh, man.
And if they're not getting a laugh, they are dying or bombing, as they say. Well, it's the same thing for a speaker. If you're not getting that interaction between the audience, you feel it. Oh, you feel it. So the thing is, if you're used to doing it on stage and you're used to feeling it, and then you get behind a mic on a radio show or a podcast and you're looking for that, it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
It's not going to be there because there's no audience, not one that you can see.
Now, it's amazing watching that, especially on late night TV. Your Colberts and
yes.
They're the same joke without interaction.
It's weird, isn't it?
It's like, wow, okay. And because you see them like, okay, let's move on. I hope you laugh.
What's worse is Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I hadn't watched much of it because they're in different parts and you got them doing.
I mean, imagine that, doing it on Zoom. That's just, that's weird.
I've seen a couple skits, and what's the two guys, the African American and the white guy that does the newscast?
Michael Che, and I can't think of the other guy's name.
Yeah, so watching them, I was like, okay, it's, because you feed off each other, and so, podcasting, you have to be ready to go, not solo, but you have to really be that DJ person without the call in.
And the great thing about podcasting, I was just interviewed on a podcast 2 days ago. The great thing about it is they had two hosts. So, they don't have, one doesn't have to carry everything.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, there's a lot of ways you can do a podcast. I mean, you can do the interview style. You can be the expert that, go at a subject for 15, 20 minutes, a whop, and, that's what it is.
There are podcasts, highly successful podcasts that are actually soap operas. They're actually soap operas on podcasts. So I mean, there's so many different ways you can do it. And imagine if you have a soap opera and you have an audience waiting and they have a cliffhanger, so they're waiting for the next episode.
So you ever wanted to be that storyteller,
right?
Story writer? It could be a whole combination of things.
Exactly.
As I begin to think about this, and I'm excited about the Pivot Conference coming up. Share something. I mean, just touch on something that you've not shared with us during this interview. A reason a person should come hear Barrett Matthews at the Pivot Conference.
Well, here's the thing. I have been, and you've known me for years, I have been teaching people for years about how to get things done productively. Well, Howard, I've come to a realization. People don't want to get things done. People want to have things done. So what I'm going to present to them is a done for you platform for podcasting.
Wow.
Yeah. They don't have
got this idea. I know all the stuff I should do. But 6 months later, it's not done.
Right.
You have to take the 6 months out.
Yeah. I'm going to take 6 months out.
And a done for you method. So, so basically what Barrett is saying is he's about to give you a takeout podcast. You just go pick up, hey, Barrett, I need 30-minute podcast, 1 hour, 1 day a week. Boom, done for you. And so, that is what you're going to do. But, someone may hear me say that and they say, okay, how are you joking about it? You're just trying to get me there.
Well, get there.
I mean, for $20, that's a small investment.
Right. Well, look, where else you going?
Yeah, especially going safely. And
right, exactly.
You're on the speaker call. You can probably talk a little bit to the energy that was there with all the speakers as we were. I equated to doing a sound check because everybody was testing this platform out.
Yeah.
And
it was fun. It was fun because we had to learn it, and we learned a little bit about each other at the same time, especially when we did the breakouts, when we talked about the networking. So right. It was fun to learn that and learn about the other speakers that are going to be there as well. So I'm telling you, you're going to get a myriad of different topics, different subjects. You cannot come away from this without learning something. It's impossible to come away with it without learning. Then it's just a matter of you taking action on what you learned. But here's the thing. It's $20. You're going to see the value is probably 20 times that.
Oh man, easy.
So you're gonna come away with that with something that you can utilize. The question is, are you gonna pivot and utilize it, or
pivot and pursue?
Because here's the thing, Howard, just like basketball, if you don't pivot, that's a 3-second violation. You can and it's going the other way.
Now, one of the other speakers, we were talking yesterday, and she said, "Yeah, back when I was number 44 at such and such high school." She said, when you pivot, if you don't recognize where you're going, and we're actually going to have a WNBA player on stage, former WNBA player.
Nice.
Miss Fran Harris, who's
oh, wow, okay.
And so she's, going to be talking some things that will help what you share, but she's going to be talking about psychology of sales, helping the sales stick. And so just imagine you have a podcast and you're able to talk about a subject or sell a service that you're continually educating people on. How do you make it stick? And like Barrett said, hey, a myriad of topics. And what we tried to do with this, Barrett, is really helping people pivot their business online. Because I don't care who you are, online has to be part of your product mix.
It better be.
If you're going to stick around.
You have no choice.
No, you don't. And so we're, marketing online. We got branding. I'm not marketing, which covers branding, sales. And so we have several speakers speaking on sales. And then we have the tech tools and apps. So like Barrett is talking about the podcasting. So we have some video, how do you incorporate video? And so you could do podcasting and video and at the same time.
And I have a program for that.
And so all of that, boom, now you're across all mediums. And then we teach folks how to, we have several trainers that are training around the social media platforms. And so how do you do YouTube ads? How do you do Facebook ads? How do you maximize your LinkedIn presence? And so those are things that you will be able to use to maximize. But I love what Barrett said, done for you. So, hey, I can connect with Barrett, boom. I can do, get my podcast done. All I gotta do is provide a little content and it's done. Doing what I love, that makes it easy.
Right.
Because I think a lot of times we get stuck on the things that we don't know. That becomes the wall.
Yeah.
Things that we don't know becomes the barrier. And
when you think about it, like when you go to your car to go somewhere, you just go and you put in the key and start the car and go. Too many of us are thinking about, well, how does that key make that engine turn, and how do the belts work, and how does the oil work through we think too much about that, and God, I don't want to get in the car now.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And so having things done for you, and that's, like I said, that's our whole pivot component, because at someone said, well, Howard,
turn the key. So
just turn the key. And that's what we were working on with people for virtual events. And so literally, Barrett, somebody said, well, why are you guys doing this? I said, one, to help people. Two, I needed to see all the nuts and bolts behind it. I need to see how the sausage is made. So I can provide sausage to other people that don't want to see how it's made.
Look, I'm going to tell y'all got to be there because this is Saturday. Friday's my birthday. So I need y'all there to celebrate with me. So we
didn't know that. We'll have to get Barrett a virtual birthday cake.
A virtual birthday cake. I'll virtually eat it all.
And just let me know what flavor you want, man.
Oh my God, that's funny.
So that's the only negative about this virtual space. My running joke, and I share this with everyone, is they call it social distancing, but to me it should be physical distancing. So you're getting away, you're physically apart, but you're still socially connected.
What they didn't want to say is keep away. They didn't want to say that. So they tried to say you can distance, but socially. You can be nice about it, but you don't have to say get away from me.
See, I couldn't have been in that naming room. I'd have said 2 yardsticks away, okay? 2 yardsticks away. You remember them yardsticks your teacher used to have to pop you with?
Yeah, I was gonna say they didn't do it for measuring.
It was like a tire. No, we digress a little bit. But no, Barrett and I always have fun. We get together. We've done a lot of things together. And, as I said, if you are planning to do podcasting, if you're thinking about doing podcasting, or even if you've never thought about doing podcasting, you need to reach out to Barrett to have that conversation of done for me, so that way you can focus on what you're good at. Barrett, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I'll tell you what, if they want to talk to me about having a podcast, all they have to do is text the word podcast. How easy is that? Text the word podcast to 929-244-4323. That's 929-244-4323. Text the word podcast. Let's have a talk.
So you're going to text the word podcast to 929-244-4323. Okay?
Correct.
So that's what you're going to do. And you're going to have a conversation with Barrett. And then in between times, or even, before that, go ahead and text him now.
And I may even have a free gift for those that do it.
A little lanyard here. So,
all right now.
And so, but you will be able to see him at the Pivot Conference.
Still waiting on that gumbo, man. I just want you to know.
I told you, man, that when you come down, it doesn't travel well. That's our other joke. You always want me to.
Let me be the judge of that.
It'll be small, and I'll be responsible for my man getting.
You freeze it, and then you send it to me, man.
I've been telling him, hey, you get to Louisiana, we're gonna have some gumbo etouffee for you, but so it look like I may have to ship it to you, man, because now, we're not gonna be traveling as much in the near.
I'm waiting.
He's waiting, but no, you can check Barrett out at the Pivot Conference, both in his workshop as well as in his trade show booth. And so guess what? You're going to learn a lot inside the workshop. Simply go to thepivotconference.com. That's thepivotconference.com. You're going to learn a lot in the workshop, and then you can carry the conversation on even further in this trade show booth and learn more about how you can have your podcast done for you. So Barrett, if you could just leave one word or one phrase just to take us out here.
Well, I always say that the things that that are going to affect you are the things that you take action on. That action can be negative or positive, but it is your choice as to which way you're going to do it. So when it comes to this Saturday, it's your choice. Which action are you going to take? Are you going to take the path, the pivot that's going to put you in the direction to score? Or are you going to take the pivot that's going to put you in the situation the way you just turn it over?
Hey, you heard it. You got to make a choice. So the choice is yours. The best choice right now is go to thepivotconference.com, sign up, spend part of the day with us, spend all the day with us. Either way, it's going to be worth your return investment. Then the last thing I want to say about that is invite some friends, because you need to have your pivot posse. That's right, a pivot posse.
I love it.
Group of people that pivot with you and help you continue forward at a faster pace. So challenge you to go to thepivotconference.com and see us on Saturday. Hey, with that said, as always, in closing, I challenge you to be the best you possible, because guess what? The view in second place never change. You're always looking at somebody's backside. Hey, take care. God bless. And Barrett, thanks a lot. And we shall see you guys at the Pivot Conference.
See ya.